Our second public hearing is to adopt a resolution approving the 2016-17 operating and the 2016-21 capital improvement program budget, and adopt a resolution approving the city's appropriations limit, which is the GAN limit for 2016-17.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. We're going to give a very brief overview of what the budget is and some of the high points that relate to the budget development over the past year. And then the Finance Director is going to go through some of the most relevant aspects of the financial data that's captured in the budget. And lastly, we have previously prepared and discussed with the City Council a list of both one-time and ongoing what we call supplemental enhancement items that are additional items not yet included in the budget for your separate consideration. We'd like to talk with you about those items and ask for any action the City Council might be prepared to take tonight. This is the third in a series of 3 meetings that the City Council has conducted to review the budget, to take the opportunity to understand its content, to evaluate, to discuss, and to provide both suggestions as well as questions to make sure that you are well informed and can reasonably consider what is a very important action for the city's future. This is not just an exercise that we go through every year, and although it takes a lot of time and energy, it is one of the more exciting and important things that we do every year. Exciting because it's an opportunity to look forward and to envision the possibilities that the coming year and our work effort will bring. And it's also important because this budget lays out the priorities for the work program, and importantly, it lays out the resource allocation to accomplish those priorities. Without the framework of the budget, we would not have the roadmap, if you will, to accomplishing the community's priorities and delivering that platform of basic services that the community needs and expects. The budget is also a time when we do a little bit of looking backwards, reflecting on where we've been over the past year and what we've accomplished with the City Council's allocation of resources at this time last year. And I would note with a fair amount of pride the work that's been accomplished over the last year and the place that we're in and the launch point that we have now for the coming year. We've taken the opportunity to include in the meeting room this evening, and I hope that we can capture that on the camera. We will also be posting to our website the poster boards that you see against the windows. And although the 2 in the center there have lots of small type on it, our intent was to give you an opportunity just to look at a glance and to be able to see some of the many, many accomplishments that our work effort has completed over the past year. You also see in the other 3 poster boards some of the more significant capital projects, pictures speaking 1,000 words, showing what we have completed and what some of our work projects in process look like. And again, this isn't really about bragging so much as it is about being accountable and demonstrating that what we said we were going to do, we have largely either have in process or have completed, and that the public's trust both in you as the council, as the city's policy leadership, and in us, the staff who implement your policy, that the trust and confidence in use of resources and completion of priorities is in fact well placed. I mentioned before that importantly the budget is the resource allocation for the accomplishment of the city's priorities. And I wanted to just make a few overview comments before I turn over to the finance director to walk through the numbers in a little bit more detail. The budget generally continues all of the city's expected and needed basic routine services at their existing levels. And the budget as prepared adheres to the City Council's continuing direction that all expenditures for ongoing continuing services be maintained within the parameters of the available revenues that are also expected to continue. That is, no temporary or one-time resources have been used to cover our basic services that continue from year to year. We generally use conservative revenue estimating procedures in order that we don't overdo and find ourselves at the end of the year with more expenditures than revenues. And we have actually, over the past many years, including most of the years of serious economic constraints, have ended the year actually a little bit better than we projected at the beginning of the year. The budget, as I said, provides that looking forward template. Our expenditures are balanced within available revenues. And at this point in the year, we have identified a relatively modest surplus of expected revenues over expected expenses. With that, we have proposed a limited list of proposed enhancements, and when the finance director's presentation is finished, we'll walk through each of those. Those are the items that I mentioned before are subject to your separate consideration and are not yet incorporated into the budget, but are recommended strongly for your consideration. Tonight, we are continuing the two study session discussions that you've had, open to both your comments, your questions, your discussion, and we are recommending tonight your approval of the budget, and as far as you are prepared to go to consider the supplemental enhancement items that are recommended for your consideration. So with that, I would like to ask the finance director to walk through the revenues and expenditures, and then we'll talk about the enhancement items.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Tonight I am proud to be presenting the 2016-17 operating and capital improvement budget. This year you'll notice it's all one document, so my staff and I are very proud to be able to do that this year. It does start, the city manager did mention that it's a long process. We start this process in June. I think it was started in June, maybe June 16th, something like that, when we provide all of the documents to the departments, and then, as I'm sure the directors behind me can tell you, we bug them quite often. We have meeting after meeting, and it does take a lot of time, and so we're happy to be here at this moment and finally presenting it to you. So with that, I'll go over the general fund revenues. In developing the revenue projections, staff carefully analyzes historic trends, the current year experience, and economic data that we have available. Total projected revenues is $41.9 million, and I'll use so you can see here, which is 1.3 million or almost 1.4 million above what the amended budget is here. So this is 3% higher than 15-16. And as mentioned in the previous budget study sessions, this estimated increase is lower than in previous years due to some pretty significant decreases in key revenue line items such as business license, sales tax, franchise and equity transfer fees, and reimbursements related to the shared fire services. Combined with these decreases amount to over a $1 million drop in anticipated revenue, so we are still able to say that our revenues are going to still increase $1 million even with that drop. The majority of the increase in revenues is primarily attributable to an increase in the city's tax revenues, including property tax, vehicle license fees, and transit occupancy tax, or TOT. Tax revenues make up approximately 68% of the general fund revenue, with sales tax at $7.4 million and property tax at $8.9 million, representing the largest categories. We are also anticipating an increase in the planning and building revenues as a result of ongoing and planned development and building permit activities in the upcoming year, and this revenue source is projected to increase approximately $243,000 when compared to the 15-16 amended budget. And staff does continue the practice of using a conservative approach when budgeting these revenues. Proposed expenditures are only about $148,000 or 0% higher than the 15-16 amended budget. And as I mentioned in the study sessions, the amended budget does include some one-time enhancements that we approved in the 15-16 budget and some carryovers. So if you took those out, it would only be a 2% increase, and the most current CPI is 2.7. So we're still below CPI in our increase for our expenditures. So the general fund summary, one thing the city manager also mentioned is that we generally come in a little higher than what we predict. So if you look at the column in the 15-16, at the end, we were projecting that we would come about an $873,000 fund balance. Now, a lot of the revenues have came in, we're almost to the end, so the expenditures, we're projecting that our fund balance will actually be $1.9 million. So that's good news. That also means that of the one-time revenues that we thought were going to come out of the original fund balance, we actually were able to cover those with new revenues. So that's a good thing. This surplus for 16-17 is $407,000, and this surplus allows the City Council the flexibility to consider limited supplemental expenditures, which we will talk about later this afternoon or this evening. So I'm going to go through the enterprise funds also. I'm just going to hit all of the numbers, and then we'll come back and, like I said, go over the enhancements. So for the water fund, as you can see, the proposed revenues for fiscal year 16-17 are slightly lower than revenues in the 15-16 amended budget. Staff is projecting that these revenues will remain flat due to a decrease in overall water consumption, and the presentation before brought that up, that water has decreased, so that does mean a decrease in revenue. But if you look at the line item with the expenditures, you can also see that that's staying pretty flat. Staff is staying within their the same amount of money. It actually decreases in 16-17, and this is because there were some one-time expenditures in 15-16, so those have went away, and now there was a decrease in the expenditures. Oh, so I also wanted to mention the operating surplus, those lines, that $4.1 million, that is what we allocate to CIP projects. So with the wastewater fund, while the water rates have remained flat, wastewater rates are anticipated to increase by approximately $465,000. Wastewater charges are calculated at a set amount each year based on water flow during the winter months when less water is being used for irrigation. Expenditures in 16-17 are actually decreasing by about 209, so that's consistent with the with water also. So, the department is trying to stay in line with their expenditures, and some of this, the reason the decrease was, again, the removal of some one-time purchases. And then moving to cable, as you know, the cable enterprise has been experiencing an increasing deficit over the past few years. However, with the City Council's proactive approach to addressing this deficit with a combination of rate increases and reductions in funds that are paid to the general fund, the 16-17 budget reflects the first significant decrease to the estimated deficit. The projected cable revenue includes the rate adjustments approved by the City Council at the May 24th meeting and are anticipated to increase by $504,000. Budgeted expenditures are only anticipated to increase approximately $136,000. So the positive operating surplus, as I mentioned, is around $436,000, and while it does not eliminate the deficit fund balance, it is a great start in addressing this long-term future of the enterprise. Just to quickly go over the CIP, the capital improvement program is designed to identify and develop projects using a long-term vision. While funding the CIP occurs on an annual basis, the program covers a 5-year period. Changes to existing projects as well as an addition of new projects may occur during the 5-year planning period as new needs are identified that require attention and allocation of resources. For 2016-17, the CIP budget includes an estimated $38 million in project carryovers, which is the first column. Carryover funds are amounts that are budgeted for ongoing projects, but when the funding crosses over into different fiscal years. New appropriations for 16-17 equals $17 million, and this gives us a total of $55.2 million for 16-17 funding. The 5-year work program identifies 52 funded projects with a cost of $142 million for necessary capital investments to city facilities and infrastructure. More than $88 million of that amount is to fund critical system improvements to the city's water and wastewater systems. The capital improvement program also includes $196 million in capital projects that do not have a designated funding source, and these projects are located in the unfunded priority section of the budget document. The vehicle and equipment replacement schedule shows a total of $2.9 million in replacements. Included in this total is $700,000 that was previously approved by the City Council for the down payment of the fire truck. In addition, this list includes a couple of large vehicle purchases, which include the new rotor truck in the amount of $360,000 for the wastewater division and $405,000 for a new Vector truck for the water division. In all, 20 vehicles are scheduled for replacement in fiscal year 2016-17, including 5 police vehicles and then the approved fire truck. And just to explain a little bit of what the GAN limit is and why we do that, the GAN limit was designed to limit growth in government spending to be no faster than the growth in population and inflation. The appropriation limit is based on actual appropriations during the base year, which is 1986-87, and increases each year, as you can see, the cost of living adjustment and the population adjustment. And this is received or provided by the California Department of Finance. And it is important to note that not all revenue sources count against the city's GAN limit. GAN limits only constrain the appropriations from state and local tax sources. For this reason, the funds that are constrained by the GAN limit are the general fund, CIP funds, and certain special revenue funds. During any fiscal year, a government entity may not appropriate any proceeds of taxes received in excess of the appropriation limit of the entity. And as you can see, our 16-17 appropriation limit is the $39,358,742. So our appropriations are $27 million, so we're way below. We have $12.2 million before we would even hit that limit, so that's very good. And with that, we are going to the service level enhancements, and I'm going to turn it over to the city manager to discuss.
So over the well, first of all, I think maybe we should pause if there's any questions on the information that's been presented so far.
Any questions for Angela at this time, or Connie? Okay.
So over the course of 2 fairly lengthy and detailed study sessions, the City Council received presentations from staff and reviewed and discussed a variety of topics related to the budget. So we are assuming that the City Council is well informed at this point. We have also provided responses to a fairly lengthy list of questions that were not adequately answered at the 2 budget study sessions, which information was previously provided to the City Council. So again, it's not our intent tonight to go over the document or its contents or any of the particular issues in any detail, except as the City Council may wish. I wanted to make a couple of comments about the process that we would recommend tonight, and then a couple of specific comments about some of the items on this list. The while we are recommending and looking forward to the City Council's consideration of both the base budget as it is presented and has been discussed with you in detail, as well as the supplemental enhancements, while we're looking forward to your consideration for approval tonight, we recognize that the council may wish to consider some items for future additional discussion. So we've prepared a check sheet for you, and we'll ask your action to let us know which of the items that you would like to consider for further discussion and which you might be ready to consider for action tonight. I also wanted to mention that the City Council, in the course of the budget study sessions, has identified another list of items that we have captured in list form for you that represents items that the City Council may wish to consider for further discussion or consideration that have not yet been vetted or costed at a level of detail that you may wish for your further consideration. That list was previously presented to you, and staff would recommend that we consider those items and any others that the council may wish to discuss at a future priority planning session to occur within the next 2 to 3 months, depending on the availability of the council. Specifically, as it relates to the proposed supplemental or service level enhancements, the list that you have in front of you divides the items between ongoing or continuing items and one-time items. Generally, the one-time items represent a purchase of equipment or an allocation of resources to contract staff resources for a defined, limited term period of time. Ongoing costs typically represent personnel costs that would be expected to continue through this year and into the future. And as I mentioned before, those have been matched against what we expect to be ongoing, continuing resources or revenues. In particular, there are 3 items from this list, although I wasn't going to spend time tonight to go over each of these individually. We have done that in the study sessions, and we believe that we have answered most of the questions, at least, that the City Council has previously asked. I wanted to provide some additional comments on 3 of the items that the City Council has discussed and may be interested in a little bit more detail that we did not yet provide to you in writing. I have it in writing, and I will provide that to you as well. Those 3 items are what's listed here as item number A, increase secretary from 3/4 time to full-time. That's the deputy city clerk position in the city clerk's office. I would just note that that position functions in the important role of, informally at least, of City Hall receptionist. And while we don't have a designated receptionist position, it is necessary and desirable to have somebody who can greet people who are, particularly those who are unfamiliar with our operations and our locations, to either direct or assist people to get to where they need to go, and particularly those who may be visiting City Hall without really knowing what department or what persons are responsible for the issue that they are here to discuss with us. That position is also important for the ongoing, continuing availability of the city clerk's office records and is frequently called upon to assist both members of the public as well as our departmental staff with accessing important records. And one thing that we didn't discuss at a previous discussions at the budget study sessions is that we look forward to embarking on a project over the next year to digitize the historic records of the city clerk's office. Some of them, as the city council may know, are actually printed on onion skin paper. They are so old and need preservation and protection, as well as accessibility. Just very briefly on two other items. Item number G, Building and Facilities Manager in the Community Services Department. We did have some discussion about this, and I think the council may have had some additional questions that we have not yet responded in writing. In essence, this position is proposed in order to allow the two Parks and Facilities Division supervisors to focus on direct daily supervision and management of the work activities of the crews to which they are assigned. Those work activities generally cover work efforts in a variety of different areas, including park maintenance, facility maintenance, custodial, and tree management throughout the community. One of the important functions of the Parks and Facilities Manager that is an area that is not receiving the attention that it requires is the delivery of capital projects associated with our facilities, and those may be routine maintenance or, in the case of our current capital budget, the development of the new restrooms at City Park. That's just one example at the current time. The intent is to transition the citywide tree management program from the building and facilities supervisor to the manager, thereby allowing the supervisor to spend necessary time working with and directing the crews in the field, and to provide a proactive, coordinated, and organized method of dealing with the myriad of facility maintenance and management issues that, again, are not receiving the attention that they need. And lastly, one of the work projects that will be hot this year is the development of the Community Facilities Vision Plan in conjunction with the San Bruno Community Foundation, leading towards the very exciting prospect of identifying facilities that the Community Foundation may invest funding foundation resources going forward for improvement of services that our community has long desired and is anxiously awaiting. And then very lastly, the third item that I think we needed to comment just very briefly additionally on is the front counter technician in the Community Development Department. That is proposed as contract resources on a one-time basis to supplement the two staff that we currently have, to provide information to the public during all of our business hours, and to assure that persons who are coming to the counter have a reasonable and not lengthy wait period. We had been asked for some metrics and had not been able to provide a great deal of detail, but we are generally finding that the wait time at our counter runs in the 10 to 15 minute area, which may not sound like a long time unless you really need something, and then it's a pretty hugely irritating amount of time to wait. But particularly we're impacted during the middle point of the day when we have both heavy telephone traffic as well as heavy counter traffic, and are looking forward to being able to flexibly staff up during periods of time during the day when that counter is particularly busy. Those are the only additional comments I have, and like I said, we provided response to many questions that you previously had in writing, and hope that we've at least covered most of the areas that the council is concerned and interested about. Tonight, the list is prepared for your consideration simply as a convenience. You're welcome to take it in any manner that you want, and we stand ready along with the department heads behind us to answer any questions the council may have.
Okay. Any questions for staff before we open the public hearing? Okay, at this time, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone from the public like to address the council on this item? Okay, if we close the public hearing, you're going to be precluded from talking to us about this. Any action?
Move to close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion is second on the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any questions for staff or action by the council?
One thing just to start, and then I'll get to my notes. And this was more in the special reserve funds, which came to the Glenview Crestmore Trust. So I still want more clarification when it comes to the current budgeted police officer and CSO. I had asked last time, specifically, how long do we see those positions in full need in the budget cycle? And then what happens to those current existing personnel that we have? So let's just, for argument's sake, say December 31st, it's done. So does that mean what to them? The other thing is that I know the city manager had informed me that they're having another review for reimbursement from the trust for staff time. With that said, I'm wondering if the council would consider going through that process, having the monies hopefully come to the city from the trust, and having it allocated out to a GL account and not put into the general fund. Therefore, allowing staff/city manager the ability to utilize some of those if we find ourselves in a tight situation on some of the final projects within the neighborhood. I think the word was cushion, to give us some cushion in order so that we know we can finish the jobs and not be short if that should happen. So it doesn't mean we're not trying to get the money, doesn't mean we don't have the money. The objective is to put it specifically off to the side should we need to go somewhere to say we're $100,000 short to finish the whole project up there, or when the bids come in, if that makes sense. Have I confused anybody? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. That's my first questions on that, and slash statement.
So first of all, staff concurs with the comments that you made regarding the trust disbursement and feels that that's an important and prudent approach to any amounts that would be due to the city as reimbursement. I will answer the question regarding the police officer and the CSO. The police officer position is expected to be needed through the time period of the trial that is the criminal trial that is currently going on in federal court, which is estimated to take approximately another, let's say, 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, and then an additional probably 2 to 3 months before sentencing if there's a guilty verdict, but that would be the maximum period of time. At that point, we would anticipate that officer returning to our workforce and there being a need to, if there's a vacancy, if we have a vacancy at that time, that position would simply be absorbed back into the workforce. If not, we would need to make some choices about the reduction of the workforce in order to make sure that we are staying within the budgeted allocations. The CSO position I expect to be needed through the end of this fiscal year. That position is deployed directly in the neighborhood and is, as we ramp up with the construction project to complete the surface restoration throughout the entire neighborhood, there will be a great deal of activity in the neighborhood, and that position will be an important means of assisting the neighborhood with dealing with the various issues that will arise with construction and making sure that things go smoothly within the neighborhood with a variety of construction-related activity and traffic.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
I have a follow-up on.
Marty?
So for informing the public and transparency on that police officer and that CSO working up in the Glenview area, the costs are coming out of the trust, 100% out of the trust, and none of the costs are recoverable, even though there's a trial, and that's just pretty much what it is. That's right.
That's correct.
Right. That is paid from the trust.
That's correct. So the police officer has been deployed in an investigative capacity relative to the city's interests with respect to the incident that occurred in San Bruno, and is part of the federal prosecutor's team that is now prosecuting criminal charges in federal court.
And so we're supplying the feds with from the trust, with our police officer, and the feds aren't going to pay for that officer being part of the team.
So that is correct as of the current time. Our conversations with the federal government, with the U.S. Attorney's Office, have as yet not resulted in coverage of those costs.
And there's no legal way of charging them for the fees. It's pretty much the city's been fronting that.
Not that I'm
trust,
aware of.
I mean, the trust, but it's money's money, you know, and it's over the 3 years. It's $800,000 that's been paying for this officer and the CSO.
So as of this time, it's been 4.5 years that the officer has been assigned to the federal prosecutor's task force. CSO, I think, has been in the neighborhood, I want to say 2 years.
Okay.
I'm not remembering, but perhaps the chief could, if he was willing, make some additional comments about what is typical in a criminal investigation. This is longer and more complicated than other investigative activities on incidents that occur in San Bruno, but it is not unusual.
Good evening again. Yes, our investigator, our primary investigator, has been assigned to this case for about 4.5 years. He is the primary investigator for a large federal investigation. By the U.S. Attorney's Office own admission, without our investigator assigned to this case, there would be no investigation or no case, and we wouldn't be where we're at now. Unfortunately, we've explored several avenues to seek reimbursement for his time. To this point, there is nothing that the law mandates or provides that would require any entity, whether it be the suspect in this case, or the federal government, from reimbursing the city for that time. The city manager is correct. The CSO has been assigned to that area for about 2 years and is very active in the community, and I think that has been very well received up in that area with in a problem-solving capacity, whether it's parking or traffic associated with construction projects or other nuisance items that we handle on a daily basis. So that's all I have to add.
Could you comment in specific, though, about the extent to which this is a normal practice, although a much more lengthy and complicated assignment for, let's say, some other type of gang-related or criminal activity that might occur in San Bruno?
Sure. Well, this case is obviously unusual, and I would go as far as to say unprecedented, and I think that we should be proud and appreciative of the work that our investigator has done, and I think that that would be acknowledged by the prosecutors at the federal level as well. It is not entirely unusual for a local investigator to be in federal court. There are cases where local investigations are adopted at the federal level. When that is the case, it doesn't change who the primary investigator is. Typically, those are more traditional criminal type cases, whether it's narcotics related or RICO type cases that are gang related, that a local investigator who initiated and conducted the investigation would be assigned as the investigating officer in that case. Granted, it wouldn't be for in most cases it wouldn't be for this length of time, but they would be the primary investigator in those types of investigation, working directly with the U.S. Attorney. That's correct.
Thank you for that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's not hard work. I'm not saying that I am saying I'm sure the person's doing a great job and is integral to the prosecution, but I think when I found out, which was just the other day, that the feds are using our officer as a special investigator, and there's no way to recover that cost. That's a lot of money. And I think that when the public is aware of that, when they see that amount of money came out of the trust, well, because I've heard from numerous people in that community that where's all the money going? And a good percentage, or a significant amount, close to 700,000, whatever it is going to pay for that officer to investigate and to help the prosecutor. So.
We'll just note, primarily for public purposes, that the trust was deliberately established, and it's the agreement that we have with PG&E that established the trust deliberately and clearly states that the funds are to be used for activities related to, arising from, and directly contributing to the recovery and restoration of the community. So that it is not just, I'm not quoting it correctly, I don't have it in front of me, but there's a common misperception that the funds are intended uniquely for physical reconstruction of the neighborhood. That is not correct, and in fact the trust funds were deliberately established at the amount that they are in order that they would be expected to cover, although we could not have predicted at that time, the intent was that they would cover the costs associated with the broad range of activities that the city has been required to participate or to direct and complete over the past 6 years.
Last question. PG&E will appeal if they get whatever that's going to happen. If they're going to get something, or it's most likely they're going to appeal. And if that happens, then what happens to the officer, and how does it get paid?
We would not expect a significant participation by the investigator in an appeal situation. An appeal of an adverse verdict to PG&E would likely take years to complete. And again, we're not expecting and have no intention of indefinitely providing the officer to the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Okay.
I just want to state for the record too, because Marty mentioned people were saying, "Where's the money gone?" Pretty thorough and detailed explanation of that a number of months ago, when a lot of neighbors did bring it up, and we had some public meetings regarding that. So that is out there. Every dime is accounted for. So there shouldn't be a question about that. Well,
and I would just mention too, I'm sorry that I forgot this, we have a shelf, literally a shelf full of documentation in our offices for each of the disbursements that we have requested through the trustee, whose independent authority reviews and evaluates each and every expenditure that we request reimbursement for. We have those documents. They are generally public information. If somebody wants to look at them, they're welcome to do that. That information is in summary form, also posted on our website. So there should be no secrets about where the money has gone. And that information it has not only been accounted for, but is publicly available.
Okay. Any other questions on the budget?
Thank you. On the one-time, what was it? Firefighter overhire. So that was obviously modified from before, I believe, because it was going to be what's wrong?
I'm sorry, I completely forgot. I should have mentioned that earlier. Thank you. Go
No
ahead.
problem.
I'll answer your question once you ask it.
No, that it just went from a ongoing enhancement to a one-time cost.
Yeah.
So that was one significant change that was noted from the study session to today's handout. So that was.
Yes, so thank you very much for asking the question, and I should have highlighted that earlier. We had originally requested a full-time permanent addition to the firefighter staffing that would have, the intent of which was to provide some relief in situations where the sick leave, vacation time, whatever, creates a need for a position to be filled on overtime. And in thinking through the needs of the department and evaluating the resource and thinking about whether this was the best approach, i.e. the addition of one more full-time firefighter that would give some relief on one of our 3 shifts to minimize overtime costs or reduce the reliance on overtime. We came up with a different approach and are recommending that rather than make that an ongoing permanent appointment of an additional firefighter, that the funds be available and you authorize under my direction, authorize the department to hire for upcoming vacancies such that temporarily during the first part of this coming fiscal year, we would actually have more people hired than our authorized staffing is. So currently, we have an authorization for 29 full-time firefighters, and then we have additional fire management, fire officer personnel. We are anticipating, we currently have 2 vacancies. We're in active recruitment for those 2 vacancies, and we're anticipating having new hires in the Fire Academy, which occurs once per year beginning in September. It's a 3-month academy, which means that we have a dead period of 3 months every time we make a hire of a new firefighter. We first have to put them into the academy, and they don't come actually into productive service for another 3 months. In the meantime, we're anticipating that we will likely have at least 2 and maybe additional vacancies that will occur at mid-year and into the beginning of the calendar year 2017. If we wait to fill those vacancies until they actually happen, we'll be waiting until this time next year to start talking about hiring people that we can put in next year's academy. And in the meantime, we will be suffering the difficulties of maintaining staffing with vacancies. So what we're proposing is that you allow us to use that resource of $140,000 to hire more people than we need right this minute, put them in the academy, and prepare for the eventuality that we will experience December, January, February, March next year when more tenured people retire and leave our department, so that while we may temporarily have not 29, but 30, 31, maybe even 32 people, we would expect by this time next year to be back to 29, maybe even 28, but we would have ready ability to put people into slots when vacancies occur, as opposed to needing to staff on overtime and then wait for the next academy. I hope that was clear enough.
So the hope would be to help minimize the overtime issues based on mandatory requirements, since we didn't have adequate staffing, one, and then two, this gives us an opportunity to go into the next budget cycle and then not be committed. So if things
That's
stabilize
correct.
or what have you, it's not an ongoing enhancement, it's a one-time situation, reevaluate, and then make a determination going forward.
That's correct.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Okay. Anyone else? Marty?
Where are we at? Were you done, Rico, with all of your? I would say, you have one more? I'm a bit just interested in the other projects that other council members and myself may be interested in doing that we proposed. I'm a bit concerned that waiting 2 to 3 months to get some action on that, when this is the time, in my opinion, where when you're setting the budget is when it all comes together. And I have a little bit of, I'm a little surprised, actually, that amount of time would have to wait, because I think some issues that I'm really interested in have been waiting for too long. The impacts of our parking in our communities, and the parking problems in our communities is a growing problem. I spoke to many people about, in different parts of town, not just on the east side of town, but up by Jeffrey and Sunset, that people are having a real hard time parking. And one of the simple solutions that I hope to hear, have the council hear is, and vote on, would be that for staff, for our crews to go out and mark the parking space on the street. I know on my block, it's long enough to fit 3 cars, like right in front of my house. It's enough to park 3 cars if people kind of pull up close enough to the curb cuts, not crowd the curb cuts too much, and you can fit 3 cars in there. But if one car comes over and takes up a space and a half, you lose that other space and a half. So all up along Linden, Poplar, Elm, Acacia on the south side, all through the avenues, parking is a nightmare. And I would like to see my proposal put forth and have my colleagues consider it. It isn't a lot of money. But that and other things that I've submitted, I'm interested in talking about those sooner as part of the budget than waiting 3 months from now to hear, well, it didn't really happen. So,
If I may suggest, I think it's important for items like that to be addressed by all 5 members of the council.
sure.
And I think we wouldn't have to wait 3 months for that. We could probably get together sooner if we had to. The other thing I think we really need to address too, if you're going to propose something like that, is to find out from the chief, for instance, is something like that enforceable? It's not we're not metering residential streets or anything, but I mean, you can mark all you want, but if it's not enforceable, people aren't going to pay any attention to the marking. So I think those kinds of things we have to hash out in maybe a priority planning session or something when all 5 of us are here. But I think our concentration tonight really should be on the budget that's proposed that we've talked about for 2.5 study sessions already. So I understand your angst about suggesting things that haven't been done, but I mean, I don't think it's the time to try to get it into this budget, but I think we should discuss it in detail. There's a lot of other issues too that you have and you brought up, and other people have too, that I think we need to discuss once again, maybe in a future planning session. I say future, in the very near future, with all 5 of us when we're all present. Yeah, another study session.
Yeah, I didn't mean to suggest that this would go on and linger indefinitely. The specific suggestion that you've made, Vice Mayor Medina, I don't have cost information for you, so I couldn't give you a number. But we have outlined as best we could with the time that we had available the ideas and suggestions that most of the ideas and suggestions that came up, at least through the 2 budget study sessions. And we're happy to do some additional work and get those in a manner that the City Council can consider sooner rather than later. I didn't mean to suggest that they would be suspended indefinitely for a long period of time.
I understand the need to set up and approve the appropriations in order to we have to do that for sure, and all the other things that aren't as important could wait until the next meeting, until we do have a full seated council. But I wanted to make that clear, that among other things, and we can talk about those later and in more depth, but for what we need to do tonight, I'm willing to move forward and deal with the appropriations. And as for all the other enhancements, we could wait until we have a full seated council. It's another meeting, unless other people have other.
No, I was going to make some suggestions too, just going off last
Sure.
budget, possibly. But Irene, you haven't. Okay. So I don't know if on the resolution on the GAN limit, if we're comfortable with that, maybe we can bring that forward, get that done. Maybe if we take the proposed service level enhancements on the ongoing and the one-time, maybe split those up, see. On the ongoing, yes, there are some areas that maybe we need to have the full seated council. On the one-time costs, if there are no situations that we think we need the full council, meaning Councilmember Ibarra, maybe that's just a way to start getting some of those taken care of. I looked from last year, but kind of how he went down the path.
Well, I think what we're trying to do tonight is approve the overall budget along with these enhancements that you find acceptable this evening. If there's something that stands out, we can hold it until all 5 of us are here, but I think we want to get as much done this evening as we can. Irene?
Thank you. So I think we can move forward, unless somebody has some great objections, I think we can move forward with the budget itself, except we can look at the enhancements one by one if you want. I don't want to hold up staff. Plus, we're supposed to adopt the budget before July 1st. So I think we can do that, unless you guys have objections.
Are there any other suggestions regarding what we'll call the basic budget?
I had a question, sure. For the City Park stormwater improvement, that of undergrounding the creek, the channel through there, it was my understanding that the Community Foundation was looking at possibly doing some work in the park and doing some configuration and maybe whatever there possibly could be done, that making sure that we allow and not get ourselves kind of along the track of building that are undergrounding the stormwater while we're waiting to see what is going to come out of that study, if anything. And so the impact it's another $300,000, I think, for this year, and then delaying it for 1 year doesn't seem like it would cause much of a problem.
The project is expected to Jimmy, could you help here? That project is expected to move forward this year. I don't know what the effect of delaying it would be, and if the storm, you will have another chance to pull out the stormwater work if it is the council's desire. Is that correct? At the point where that project could come back to the city council for consideration of removing the channelization of the stormwater when the Crystal Springs sewer project goes forward. Is that correct?
That's correct. The current thought is to include that project as part of the Crystal Springs sewer replacement project, because the sewer replacement work will be performed within the same area along City Parkway. And the thought was to have both of these projects bid together so that we don't disrupt the area, two separate times.
But if the council decided they didn't want to do that, they have the option to do that. Leaving it in the budget doesn't force you to do the project that way. The project could be modified to eliminate the stormwater channelizing.
Correct.
So we can approve it as it stands and then pull it out if we so desire at a future date.
If the council is comfortable with that approach. I mean, we're not, I was just suggesting that project is intended to move forward this year, and I would not recommend deferring it.
Sure. What point are we in the design, or where are we at?
We're at the 90% design stage currently.
The last stage?
90%.
90%, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Anything else, Marty?
As a former Public Works Inspector, Engineering Technician, I believe that was my job title. Item H is...
I'm sorry, I'm proposing just approving the regular budget
Oh.
and capital,
Oh, I thought
and
we-
then do the enhancements
Okay,
next.
sure, okay, no problem.
That's fine.
All right, he asked me anything else. All right,
Oh, that's what I propose, so that's what I am proposing. So
Okay.
right this second, we do the capital improvement and the regular
Okay.
budget.
So is that an
That's
introduction of the
an-
resolution?
That's the introduction to the resolution for that,
For the capital,
for the capital and the
Operating budget.
regular operating budget.
so the whole binder.
Right.
The whole binder.
The whole binder.
And then we'll look at the enhancements.
Okay.
Well, okay, I see what you're saying.
Right, separate.
So everything in here, this is all separate.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
The one-time and the ongoing.
Yes.
I think I got it.
Okay. Is that clear to everybody? Okay.
Okay.
So there you go.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Rico Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Marty Medina.
aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. And would someone want to introduce the resolution for the GAN limit?
Okay, I'll introduce the resolution for the GAN limit thing.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Rico Medina.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Marty Medina.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Okay.
Okay. Now,
We have a functioning government.
we do.
Well,
We have a functioning
I
government.
think the city manager put a resolution in there in case we needed to extend, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, you see, she had a backup plan.
She's good. That's why we keep it. Okay, so now I'd like us to look at the one-time costs from I through V.
Okay.
So if there is no objections or questions on those items, I'd like to move that we approve those items.
Is it in motion, okay?
Oh,
Second?
Is there a second?
Rico.
Okay. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, now I'd like to start with A. So A is increased secretary from .75 full-time equivalent to 1. And this is, as you all know, it's the deputy city clerk, and this is, the person is Vicki Hachey, who does a fabulous job. And just as an aside, I was with the city clerk of South San Francisco, who is also an elected city clerk, one of the few left. She has 4 full-time assistants, and they are looking to hire another full-time person. So their city is only a third larger than ours. Their population is 66,000 roughly, and ours is 42,000. So you can see just by that how much leaner and smarter, I guess, we work, or I don't know how you want it, or more efficiently than South City does. I shouldn't say that way, but anyway. So I think moving the position from 3/4 to full-time is, and for $27,000 for the amount of work that we get from that position, is a very small price to pay. So I'd like to move that we approve A.
Through the chair. Oh, we're on, maybe I'll wait for a second, then I'll...
Okay, is there a second?
Being new to all this, so basically, I'd like to hear what Rico has to say.
Well, you just say a second, and then he'll ask on the question, and then
Then we
Rico
can
can
talk
have a
about it.
question.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion and a
Here's a
second?
second.
On the
So,
question?
Yeah, I have a few comments.
Okay.
So, if it were about the person, then I would have no problem. I've known the deputy city clerk back from the recreation days, so that's not, I'm looking at it as far as position. I'm going to bring up some of the comments I made before, and that is that we have a situation where the electric has said, okay, we're going to go to appointed city clerk. And I know the city manager said, well, that's about in 18 months, so we have time. But I know in the information that staff gave back, it said, well, we're already considering a recommendation potentially to have the treasurer now become part of the finance director. So there's already some thought that's been going in. Mm-hmm. So one, what I will say again is I find it very unfair that if you increase a person, being one who was part-time here, who got increased to full-time, so I've walked in those shoes, and then you say, you know what, we've reassessed the office because now we're going down a new path and it's going to be appointed and now we need to modify things. I don't think that's fair. That's the first thing. The second thing is, you know, I go back in the history which was reported here from 2005 to 2010, the position remained at .75. That's a fact, that's history. I wish in this period of time that we would have had the forethought, the acknowledgement, concern, if that was the case, to maybe look at enhancing that. Obviously, we know in 2010 that she did a lot of work. You can see by the overtime she put in during our disaster in this community, and has been doing that since. It's been 0.25%, and in the last budget cycle, if we really put it down, would we be seeing that 0.25 was an adequate allocation, or was it also it's just taken from the trust, so it helped fund that, and now we're in this, it's not there anymore, like the police officer, that we may have a reduction. So I don't like going down that path. I know on the firefighter we said, hey, let's do a enhancement one time and then reassess it again. So I find us making a decision for historically it's not supported, as well as we're undergoing a transition in the clerk's office from elected to appointed. So for those reasons, looking at it not with my heart, but in the interests of, I think, precedent going forward, I am not going to support it at this time. But I would say, if there were other avenues for, and I don't know why it says secretary up there, but I knew it as the deputy city clerk, so, but I know it's listed as secretary. If there are other avenues and opportunities for the deputy city clerk / secretary to have those hours in other areas, I like that idea. There's other one-time allocations we're approving down below here that have been suggested that maybe that person can also assist in those areas. So that's just as a suggestion of trying to think outside the box.
Okay, and I appreciate what you said. I just believe that the position is a full-time position now and will be for going forward, no matter what the city, if the city clerk is appointed or elected. That position takes care of a lot of the day-to-day things that happen. They answer the telephone, they direct people, they have, I've seen the person you're referring to have at their fingertips countless resources that they direct people to, not only in the city, but in the county. That person's a valuable commodity, I guess, a resource for everyone in the city, and that person works full-time regardless of who is paying it or how it's being paid. So I understand what just, and with firefighters, there's already 29 of them, and policemen, there's only one assistant city clerk. And when that person's not there, there's nobody to answer the phone.
I'm not disputing with the whole, I think the way we've gotten here and then personalizing it, I don't think is the appropriate thing, to be honest with you. That's just my opinion. But at the same time, too, I think there can be arguments made. I mean, let's go back in history when Maggie and Ann used to sit at the front desk, both part-time, and they answered the phones. It eventually went over into the clerk's office. So I've been around City Hall and I've seen that, and I'm just saying that I believe putting the cart before the horse before we've looked at other options, meaning what's going to happen in the clerk's office. And I think that's smart business, and I think that we should have done that upon the election, and obviously there's already consideration on the treasurer's position. So there's a suggestion coming back from staff of maybe merging that. I'm not saying we're going to merge anything, but I'm saying the council has not even addressed what the process will be and how it's going to be done. And yes, I will say that position has got the right face, the right smile, and the right attitude, bottom line.
I just want to throw something in here. First of all, treasurer's duties and the clerk's duties, time-wise, are entirely different. So it's so much easier to merge the treasurer's duties into the financial end, and that's just thinking forward. I don't know what's going to happen in 18 months exactly, but the fact remains, in my mind, that this is not just a staffing position. This is a position that another elected official in the city at this point in time says is required and is needed, because her statutory duties have increased over the years too. It's not like it was when we were sitting there and Terry was there and half the time we're riding horses. Sorry to say that, but it's a whole different thing. You have somebody here who's 8 hours a day, and she needs an assistant. And regardless of the trust paid for part of it, that's not happening now, and thank goodness that the trust is dwindling down quite a bit. But as far as the reimbursing us for a lot of things, but when another elected official says my statutory duties are increasing and I really need this person going forward full time, I have to respect that. So if we can't agree this evening, my suggestion would be to hold it off until the 12th, when all 5 council members are here, to address the request made by another elected official.
And that's no disrespect to any elected officials or relationships or outside and all of that. If it were on one-time costs in the transitional phase, I may be more open to that. But as it's written now, that's one of the main reasons I'm not. So let's bring it to the 12th. I'm done on this topic.
Is that all right?
Oh, no, I was going to.
Move it to one time and just go ahead and approve it right now?
I was gonna suggest that we approve it one time for this year, and with the understanding that in the end of this 12 months, that the council and the city clerk and the assistant city, we
Secretary,
do something
whoever.
where we sit down and figure out how this is all gonna work. So,
Can I add something?
Mayor.
In Vicky's part-time position, when she was 3/4 of the time, most of the time she worked a 40-hour week. Her job is a 40-hour week job. She's got so many different responsibilities, and she's got 17 years under her chin of historical data that nobody else has. Nobody else has in City Hall. And that job needs to, because my office has to be opened every day from 8 to 5, it has to be manned by someone every day, 8 to 5. 3/4 time, she just kept working so that I could take vacation. So I do want you to consider that. And it's not about the person, it's about the position.
Right.
And if we do go to digitizing, I definitely need to have a full-time deputy, because it will be transitioning to someone when I retire, and she knows all about the office. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments, and I wish we'd heard those earlier. I'm still with that on my point of it is just when I look at it from a business perspective and looking at long-term, I think that's why I'm comfortable with. I am comfortable, and I would say it now in support, one-time cost.
Okay.
And then I will move that we do it as a one-time cost with the caveat that we review the position at the end of 12 months.
Absolutely. No, I mean,
Or-
let's do
The
it.
seconder agree to
Let's
that?
do it sooner.
Second?
Okay.
Okay, there is a motion and a second on the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. The next one, I guess do we need to vote on that since it's a decrease in the budget?
Well, I think so. It's here. Yeah.
You can do it by consensus. We'll
Okay,
be
we
able
agree
to
with B.
report it.
We agree with B. How about item C?
Okay, reclassify, I've read all the,
It's an overall
yeah,
wash.
I've read the
Okay.
justifications for all these. I
Can we do these
trust
by
the
consensus,
staff.
Mark?
So I move that we do,
He said yes.
Okay, he said we can do it with consensus, that's fine.
Okay.
Everybody agree to that?
ABC.
okay,
A, B, C, done.
Yes.
D,
I'm no at this time.
I'm yes. Do you want me to move?
Oh, you're on item D now?
Yeah.
D.
Yes.
D, yes.
For the public's point, can you just give us the main gist of why this is necessary?
Sure. We have a staff, I believe, of 5 custodians? 4.5 custodians. They're deployed all over the city generally at non-business hours. And our supervisor is, in the current arrangement, has a broad spectrum of responsibilities, but has a business hours work assignment, primarily because of responsibilities associated with tree management. So that's not likely to change. Would not be effective to move him to evening hours assignment. By reclassifying, simply adding to the duties of one of the custodians, we have the ability to better manage in real time and to provide quality control by having the lead custodian assume some of the lead responsibilities, not at the supervisor level, but at the level of a lead, to assure that people in the right places doing the right things, and generally getting the job done in a manner with a little bit more hands-on oversight.
Through the chair, follow-up question. I know that there was a trial basis that for the last few months I read.
That's correct.
So when was the last time we had somebody as a lead custodian prior to this trial basis?
Our custodial staff has changed. There's been a fair amount of change and reduction in that staff over the last decade. I don't actually remember. Yeah, I think it's been approximately, it's been, to my recollection, about that 10-year time period. But we have fewer custodians now on board than we did at the time when we had a lead custodian.
So that's where I go, and it's again, I was here too when we had lead, and it was under the Parks and Recreation. It was a Recreation Services Manager who oversaw those positions. There was a lead at the time. As you said, there was more custodial staff. So what I'm trying to understand too is you have less staff to supervise, and again, they're at various hours, different facilities. And this is an existing custodian that's now going to be a lead with additional responsibilities, therefore the increase in pay. And they're going to organize all of those folks that they may not always run into. So I'm understanding with that short staff, if you have 4.5, we're really minimizing, I think, if this person needs to go around and supervise, it could hurt the current conditions of our facilities by them not all getting the attention. And we are basically saying a person would be supervising 3.5 people, when before, as we all know, was quite a healthier staff when it came to custodians. So that's what I'm trying to figure out, how it's not going to hurt existing, and how we're going to get the value, and how this will be proven effective.
Yeah, so this is not a supervisor position. This is a lead position to be a go-to contact person to check in periodically. And by periodically, I'm not understanding that would be anywhere near on a daily basis. There is no intent to suffer the work. That person has custodial responsibilities, important custodial responsibilities, and those would need to continue to be performed. This would be simply a means of having a presence, a go-to, an opportunity to check in occasionally, periodically, to make sure that in real time, none of the supervisory duties, performance evaluations, work scheduling, that type of thing, intended to be transferred from the supervisor to the lead.
Okay, anything else? On this?
Would it be okay to do it for one time and see how it works out for the next year? And do you have any objection to that?
I would be okay with that, but then I would ask, as it comes back, to have some very strong data and some metric as to the benefit and the value that this has added. I think so many times in the private world and business, and I've been on both sides, I mean, you have to evaluate what works, and you have to be willing to make some changes and modifications. And so I think that's reasonable. Staff suggests it. Let's give it a try. But I will support one time.
Consensus?
Sure.
Okay, we got it. E as in echo.
I'm supporting it. Do you?
Okay,
I'm fine. Consensus, yes.
sure.
Okay.
There we go. F, part-time fire inspector.
Yes.
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 Yes, okay. G, building and facilities manager.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
Stalemate.
Some you want to hold off till the 12th? Talk a little bit more about it? Sure. Is that all right with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll do that. And engineering tech.
With the modification, that it's not just a tech, that's an engineering tech. That's the position that I had when I worked here. It was a dual role. We were inspectors and we also were technicians. And the benefit of having that would be when one of the two inspectors is not around, that inspector can go out and fill in for that person that's missing. And when things are really, really busy, that person is an inspector that's going to go out and make sure we're going to cover everything. So whatever I don't think there's much of a difference in cost, but if you have that, I think it'd be definitely beneficial for that position to be an engineering inspector technician. And I'd be in favor of that. Just having the person in the office, not a full range inspector, I think is something that wouldn't be as beneficial to the department. And you're saying
He
yes.
says he can do it.
He can do it.
Yes.
It's the same cost?
We would
yes.
have to look up the cost.
It wouldn't be different.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
We'd
Good,
have
we
to
need another inspector.
Okay. Irene, we're good?
Sure.
Rico?
Sure.
We're good, sure. Now it gets easy, really easy. Okay, we're just going to hold off one until the 12th when all 5 council members are here, and if anybody needs any additional information on G, building and facilities manager, is that all right?
Yes, absolutely. If any additional information that we can provide would be helpful. And then there are actually a couple of items that I've heard from council members to add to the list of those items that were initiated by council members. We'll get that list back to you. We'll continue to take your comments and suggestions so that we can get those back to you very soon in a opportunity for a study session. You can discuss those in more detail.
Okay, good.
And then just when we reconvene in August, on the manager position, I would also like to have us discuss if that were not to go through, or if it does, it does, but if it doesn't, that maybe adding a maintenance worker. So that's what I'm also looking, so I wanted the council to be aware that I will be bringing up maybe that discussion as well.
Okay.
You mean July?
You mean July?
God, where am I at?
I don't
I
know.
don't know.
I'm here, July.
Sometimes.
Here in July.
I'm glad you asked that question. All right, once again, I want to thank staff and manager and her staff for putting this budget together. It's pretty exhaustive work, and it's very well thought out, and it's congratulations. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And as I said at the study session, but again, I think the new format with it in one binder, and hopefully this will save you time going into the next year's budget, so I think that was a good thought and a good job.